And that takes care of everything the Bible says about free will. Steve's been waiting and waiting and waiting to have his question answered and couldn't be here this afternoon, so he wanted to make sure it was recorded. All right. Question was, how can we reconcile the idea of free will with God's omniscience? And I'll go ahead and toss the idea of predestination in there while I'm talking about things.
That's the freebie.
It's like the Olympics. Get that degree of difficulty factor in there too. All right. So the idea here with the question, the idea is if God knows, here's everything that everybody is going to do throughout all of time. Is there really free will? Like, for instance, let's take a particular case, Adam and Eve. Did God know that Adam and Eve were going to eat of the fruit in the garden? Well, if we believe in the idea that God is all-knowing, then we have to say, yes, God knew it was going to happen. So, if God knew it was going to happen, and he put Adam and Eve in this situation, here was this fruit that he knew they were going to eat. Well, then did they really have free will? Because couldn't God have, God could have put that fruit in a different place, made it look different, done something different so that they wouldn't partake of it, could have spoken up right before they said something, could have done something to stop the serpent, could have, and things wouldn't have turned out that way. Therefore, the fact that that this is what happened, and God knew that was going to happen, doesn't that mean that that's exactly what God wanted to happen? So goes the argument. Well, there's a big difference between knowing something is going to happen and causing it to happen. I'm hearing a little voice from the back row there. You ever have her in a situation you know as soon as you turn your back on her, you know she's going to get into something? Yeah. Does that mean you made her do it? No. But you know she's going to do it. Why? Because that's what kids do. And if they don't do it now, they're going to do it in 5 minutes. Or they're going to do it next. All right. If you want to keep kids from ever getting into trouble, you know what you can do? You can wrap them in bubble wrap and lock them in the bedroom. Yeah, I can put the brakes on his wheelchair and that'll slow him down a little. That's all it's going to do is slow him down. And you know what? They're never going to mature if they never have the opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them. Even though you know they're going to make a lot of wrong choices. Okay, insert a lot of Bill Cosby routines right now. Yeah. We are. Why'd you do that? I don't know. But hopefully they learn from the bad decisions. You know, you give them a little bit of leeway. Now let's back up. Does the Bible, some people don't even teach that we have any kind of free will. You got this spectrum of beliefs. On the one hand, you've got the idea that everything is predetermined. Every choice that, what we think of the choice, every action is all scripted throughout all eternity. Everything that ever happened through all time. On the other hand, you've got, which Calvinism is, if they're not all the way out there, they're pretty close out there. On the other hand, you got the idea of deism, where God put the universe in motion and kind of stepped back and doesn't even keep an eye on it after that. Bible truth somewhere in the middle. God knows what's going on, but he doesn't. I refuse to believe that God intervenes in events when I'm playing Monopoly to influence what number I roll. Could God do it? Yes. Okay, any question you start off, could God do something? With very few exceptions, unless it's a logical contradiction, could God make a four-sided triangle? Or something against God's nature, could God lie? Anything else? Could God do it? Yes. Will God do it? Not unless there's a really good reason. What is God going to intervene in these things? Unless that serves a purpose. And Esther 8:9. Or 9:8. Let's look 8:9 first. See if I was right. Probably 9:8. 9:8. Nope, not that one either. Okay, I got the right book. Yeah, 4:14, that's what I said. Okay, Mordecai, backing up, Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such time as this? Was God going to deliver the Jews out of this persecution that was coming? Yes, because he said that they were going to be going back in. So he would have to save them in order to return them to Jerusalem. So that much was, the question was how. Notice Mordecai did not say, well, it's obvious, we can see, here's the evidence that God has intervened in the affairs of men and caused these things to happen. No. Who knows if this is why you're in this position? We don't know. We can't see on this side of eternity where God intervenes. We need to do what we're supposed to do. Let's let God worry about his part of it. But maybe that's why she was there in that position, is what he says to her. Maybe God put you here so that you would be able to influence these things and save the people. Even though we can't put our finger on one particular place and say, look, right here, this is where God changed things. Things would have gone in path A. He made it go to path B right here. We can be pretty confident that God did something somewhere throughout the book of Esther. God did something so that all these events would be lined up, so that Esther would be able to influence the king, save the people. Where was that action? I don't know. It's his business, not mine. But going back to the spectrum, how much does God intervene? Does God script every single event? If you believe that, well, the ancient rabbis said there were 613 commands in the Old Testament. I'll take their word for it. I haven't counted them. I've seen a list that says there's about 1,000 New Testament commands. I haven't gone through and counted them all. It sounds about right, because I looked through the list, and point being, if you have all these different commands that God has given to man, what's that say about man? What's it say about God? What would God be like? What would you think of a man who took his son, tied him to a chair? Okay, I can't really point to my son, but he can get up out of there if he needs to. Tied him to a chair. Told him to come over here. I'll reward you if you do. I'm going to punish you if you don't. Come on, you better come over here. You're going to get a whooping if you don't come here. All right, I warned you. Doesn't that sound cruel? Mm-hmm. To punish somebody for something they're unable to do? That's the picture a lot of people have of God. They have this idea that God has given a command that people can't follow. A lot of commands God has given that people don't want to follow. But if you think you can't follow it, that's cool. If God scripted, and there are religious groups that teach that God scripted the fall in the Garden of Eden, that Adam had no choice, that he was even fulfilling God's will when he ate of that fruit. Well, if he was fulfilling God's will, that wasn't sinful, was it? And it doesn't make sense. The very fact that God has given us commands, and we have a loving God, the implication is there that these commands were possible to follow. It doesn't make sense to command something that you couldn't do. Now, as far as knowing things aren't going to be done, if we got mountains back in Tennessee, all right. If I see a train coming around this mountain on this track, and I see over here on this same track another train coming the other direction, I can see both of them from the other side of the valley. But the mountain's in the way, they can't see each other. They're coming full speed. Do I know those trains are going to hit each other? I'm seeing them coming full speed. Yeah, I know it's going to happen. That mean I caused it?
No.
Big difference between knowing something's going to happen and causing it. God has given people free will. He's given us commands. He knows that we can obey. Will everybody obey? No. And I'm sure that breaks his heart. Just like you're going to tell your kids not to do certain things, and you know they're going to do it. But you give them enough room so that they can make the mistakes and learn from them. What would have happened if God had stepped in sooner with the serpent? Adam, Eve, they were about to eat the fruit. Oh, wasn't going to do it. Yeah, you were. I knew you were going to. Yeah, no, I wasn't going to do it. I was just taking a real close look at it. Isn't that what a little kid would do? That's the same thing that we're going to do. The only way they would have realized they were going to do it is to give them enough room for them to do it. So what about the idea of predestination with this? Once again, the Calvinist has the idea that God predestined certain people, and they're the only ones who would be able to overcome that inherited sinful nature. We touched on this Wednesday night a little while ago. Romans 8, 29 and 30, excuse me. For whom he did foreknow, he did also predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. What was predestinated? Not that this individual would be saved, this one would be lost, nothing they could do about it, no say in the matter, no choice, and no. What was predestinated was that these ones who were going to be the called, the justified, the glorified, were the ones who would be conformed to the image of his Son. The ones who were going to be Christ-like. Those were the ones. What was predestinated was the plan. God, from the beginning, said that he's got a plan that if they want to be forgiven of their sins, They need to be like my son. Some will, some won't. And when day of judgment comes, nobody can say, well, you didn't give me a chance. Well, I would have if only you let me. God gives us the free will. And the question now is, what are we going to do with it? Will we use that free will to obey, or are we going to do what we want to do? Did that take up all the time, or we got room for one more?
I think that took up the time.
Huh?
I think that took up the time.
Man, I thought I was going to do good this week. Okay. All right, well, keep giving me questions, because otherwise I'm going to run out of them. I've got a couple of them for next time, including, give you a little sneak preview here, trailers for the fable of the thistle and who is Lucifer.